since we have guests, we're going to go over the roles and we'll give a little bit more in-depth explanation. So our timer for tonight is going to be Donovan. Donovan, can you let our guests know what the timer role is?
Yes, Cody, I will. So there are three portions of timing. One is the two speakers. So tonight will be Sean, Shay, and Diego Laredo. That would be Diego's would be 5 minutes to 7 minutes, and Sean's would be 4 to 6 minutes. For the table topics, it would be 1 minute to 2 minute speech. And for the evaluator, which would be Cheyenne tonight, it would be 2 minutes to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Okay.
We also have evaluators for tonight. Maurice, do you want to give our guests an idea of what the general evaluator and a first evaluator, second evaluator
Yes.
does?
The general evaluator gives a general evaluation of the meeting after the speeches and the table topics, whether it started on time, if we had any delay, if there was someone behind the lectern at all times, things like that. And he will also get a report from the timer, the grammarian, and the all counter, and as well as the speech evaluators. And I'll be the first speech evaluator, and I don't know if we got a second speech evaluator. Oh, we do have a second speech evaluator. Yes.
Thank you, Bruce. We also have a table topics master, and that's going to be myself as well. This role is a section where we do impromptu speaking. So I'll come up with a topic, and tonight I'm feeling generous. I'm going to voice the topic first, and you can come up if you want to. And as guests, you're more than welcome to try it out. You want to watch a couple of us do it, and then if you feel brave, I'm going to come up here and give it a try. You're more than welcome. And it's a 1 to 2 minute speech for those. Oh, also, we don't have a grammarian. Sean, could you do it, and I'll do you for your speech?
Sure.
Okay.
I could do it with all counter.
Okay.
I don't have one.
So I'm doing grammarian.
Ephemeral.
You just want to do it all, Sean? Is that fine? I'll
Did
count
you
it.
sign? Because the grammarian was empty when I signed up this afternoon. Did you sign up for grammarian?
No,
No.
I'm just saying Cody, I think, volunteered me for that, right?
But if you
Yeah,
feel
I
comfortable.
checked yes on it.
Oh,
It
I
was-
guess that's fine.
It was kind of last minute.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, so I'll be the grammarian and the all counter, all counter. And what I do is while we're giving our speeches, I will look for filler words, but, so, repeating words, and also look for the word of the day, which is the touchscreen. I don't know how to say this word, so we'll let the here it goes.
Ephemeral. Ephemeral.
Ephemeral, lasting for a very short time. An example sentence, fashions are ephemeral. So I will give a report at the end of any filler words that anyone used, and also how many times the word of the day was used. Ephemeral.
Thank you, Cheyenne. That is an overview of what we'll be doing tonight. I will now introduce our first speaker. Oh, it's Sean's first speech, the icebreaker. So, as guests, you can see this would sort of be your first intro speech, kind of a speech about yourself. So let's welcome Sean as he gives us an icebreaker speech.
Thank you, Cody. Fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, my speech tonight my icebreaker tonight is titled, "Is it today or is it tomorrow?" The reason I titled my speech with this title is when I was a young boy, I would take a nap and family members would tell me the story that I would wake up confused and ask them, "Is it today or is it tomorrow?" And they always got a good laugh out of it, and they've told me the story up to recently. And the speech, the is it today or is it tomorrow, is also very much the process of writing the speech. It's pondering the past, you know, looking at today, where it's brought me today, and then seeing where it will take me tomorrow. My family, I'm married to my wife, Tiffany. We've been married for 14 years. We have a 7-year-old daughter, Sydney. And Toastmasters, for me, I joined because my supervisor kind of encouraged me to join and get involved. We had some people at my work that had been in Toastmasters, and it's helped them as well. And I'm hoping that will help my public speaking skills, marketing, communication, just in a technical way. I'm a civil engineer. That's my occupation. So when I was at Auburn back in my sophomore year, I was training to be a commercial pilot, and I was in that major for a year and a half. I flew 50 hours, and I had 2 close calls that I started thinking about all the flying I did, and then I thought about, I actually had somebody remind me that I almost ran into a plane that was painted camouflage, and I didn't see it, because it's all visual flight anyways. I decided to change my major to civil engineering, a more grounded career. And now I design bridge foundations and bridge structures. I'm a native of Tampa, Florida, and I'm proud of my hometown. I followed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. From Mobile, it's a little challenging, and they're not very good, so they're not on TV very much. But they were at one point a Super Bowl champion. So I also enjoy visiting my family twice a year, and seeing most of my family still live in the area. My wife and I also met at Auburn, graduated from Auburn, and we're also very big Auburn football fans. So we're watching football a lot in the fall. We like to go up there once a year and watch a game and just hang out on the campus. I also enjoy running, and I run for fitness reasons now. I used to run competitively in high school. I more jog than run now, so. But I still enjoy the feeling I get after running when I'm done, and knowing that I've done something healthy. I've also ran 2 marathons in the past couple years. I stumbled into running. I used to play basketball. I stumbled into running in 8th grade as a way to get in shape for basketball season, but it actually turned out that distance running was my strength and what I continued to do on into high school. I also was in Boy Scouts growing up, and I learned a lot about leadership, outdoor skills. I had a lot of good stories from that, and some scary ones, such as getting lost in the woods and thinking I was going to be alone in the woods sleeping by myself. But I was found by my dad towards the end of the day. So I would say all these experiences, along with flying and running marathons, I'm thankful to be standing here today with you and sharing these experiences. I hope I've helped you to know me a little more, and that I'm able to face fears of the past and challenges of the future, such as public speaking. I'm thankful for today, grateful for the experiences and lessons of yesterday, and looking forward to tomorrow, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Sean. Always enjoyed the icebreaker. Get to learn a little bit more about my fellow Toastmaster. You did a great job. Thank you for sharing with us today. Our next speaker is a little more experienced. What speech is this, Diego?
I think it's 11.
11?
Yeah.
So you've already completed the comedy communicator. So this speech is on, I can see why you're saying you're going to channel your inner Lauren.
Yeah.
So how to give a pocket speech. Let's welcome Diego.
Thank you so much, Cody. While I'm very appreciative of the audience that I have today, I was really hoping that Lawrence could be here because he's my muse when it comes to giving pocket speeches, because the guy really knows how to do it. And so hopefully he'll watch this recording one day, and hopefully he'll give me some good feedback on this pocket speech. So the title of this speech today is How to Give a Good Pocket Speech. And I think before I get into some of the techniques that you can use the next time you have to give a pocket speech, I want to first highlight some of the sources of anxiety or concerns that you might have that might prevent you from wanting to practice and give a pocket speech in the future. For me specifically, I think the two obstacles that I face that I'm going to confront right now in this moment is the importance of having a main idea, a body, and a conclusion. And less so, I think the second issue is, of course, filling up those 5 minutes of time. When you've done table topics which last around 1 minute or so, I think what makes it way more appealing and more approachable to do is it is a 1 minute speech, and therefore you're expected to have at least one main idea. But I think with a pocket speech that's about 5 minutes long, perhaps what's more daunting is you're not expected to have one main idea, but maybe you're expected to have three main ideas, as opposed to just one idea that you can communicate in a minute or so. So now that I've gone over the potential sources of anxiety that might prompt you not to want to give a pocket speech, let's talk about the techniques that you can use that will make pocket speeches less daunting and less intimidating. And the first technique that I want to highlight is you do not have to be the main event at any speech period. It's a great opportunity for you to engage in audience engagement. For example, you can do a simple by a show of hands poll. Like, for example, by a show of hands here tonight, who has had to give a pocket speech before? And it's great. Even if no one raised their hand, you just used up 15 to 20 seconds and 30 seconds or so of the pocket speech explaining the conclusions of the poll that you just gave. Another example that you can use to fill out the time of a pocket speech is, of course, using some well-rehearsed pauses throughout the speech to let the ideas sink in and to avoid filler words like so, and the like that we always practice every single day. And I think, and again, the most important thing that I'm going to exercise tonight is you can give a pocket speech, but it's not the end of the world if you do not meet the 5 minute minimum criteria. Because the end purpose of a pocket speech is to just come up on stage and learn to exercise that muscle of trying to give a speech when you haven't had as much time to prepare for it as you might with an icebreaker speech or one of the other speeches that you are expected to give in the Pathways Base Camp. In conclusion, these are some of the techniques you can use for pocket speeches, and hopefully highlighting some of the sources of anxiety and realizing that it's not the end of the world if you don't meet the 5 minute minimum criteria, or not being able to communicate a main idea with a body and conclusion paragraph. It's not the end of the world if you don't get that done on the first try. We are human beings. We don't babble 100% of the time. And hopefully this message tonight will inspire more of us to want to engage in pocket speeches. Mr. Tabletop Toastmaster. I'm sorry, Mr. Toastmaster, not table. Well, you're the tabletop. Yeah.
I'm gonna transform on them. Thank you, Diego. That's some good tips, and you're right. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I think, especially for myself, I need to try to give a pocket speech when we don't have a speaker or two speakers, just to get up here and give it a shot. So I was polled for 5 minutes. All right, so now we're moving on to the table topics portion of our meeting, and I'm going to ask the first question. What would you like to change? How many volunteers for that one?
I don't know.
Okay.
That was on my right.
Yeah.
I was told not to guess. How is everyone doing? I kind of forgot the question.
What would you like to change?
Alright, cool. If there was a few things that I would like to change, I think I'd be here all day. So I'm gonna keep it ephemeral. Damn. I tried. So if there was one thing I could change, I think it would be how fast day turns to dark, because of the simple fact there's so much opportunity and things that can be accomplished with more time, even though we push it to the limit by going that extra mile and utilizing 24 hours. If there was more daylight for those of us who work outside, myself, more can be accomplished. And for those entrepreneurs who have errands and have to, or people who sell houses, there's locations where it's dark and they can only show those residents in the daytime. So if I could change one thing, that's what it would be, how fast they change. Or I think I said it right. That's me.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's something we'd all wish. I wish I had more time to do all the stuff I wanted to do. Okay, next question. Okay, let's go. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self one thing, what would you tell yourself? Advice from the future. All right, Diego.
Thanks, Cody. The question that was posed to me tonight is if I could go back in time and tell my younger self to do something different. And I think the thing that I would like to go back in time to my younger self would be not to play as many video games. Because I think I missed a lot of opportunities playing video games, like hanging out with friends, or doing more sports, or actually being a good student and doing more homework and developing an interest in reading more. So I'm still thinking, like, this is a difficult thing for me to wrestle with, because I'm not totally regretful for the video games that I did play or the time that I spent with them, but at the same time I do recognize that moderation is key, and if I had a more healthy relationship with video games, I didn't count on them so frequently to be the highlight of my day, I think I would have been a more well-rounded individual. I would have more experiences to think about and to share with friends, and other sorts of manners like that. So that's the advice I would give my younger self. I'm very skeptical that he would take it, but it would still be don't put as much an emphasis in video games as you should. And I'm gonna turn it back to you now, Mr. Taylor.
It's probably advice I'd give my younger self as well, because I felt like I could have accomplished a lot more if I wasn't playing video games. Maybe advice I can give my kids in the future. All right, next question. What makes you proud? You can do it audible too if no one wants that one. Done? All right.
The question I have been given was, what is the most thing that I'm proud of? There are a lot of things to be proud of. One, your parents. One, you can be proud of yourself. You can be proud of your family. You can be proud of anything that you can imagine. Anything that you can imagine is amazing. But the main thing that you want to be proud of is the people that you love. And those people that loves you, you should be proud of them, because if they don't put into the work and put into all that effort and all the hard work, like for example, in high school, my father takes time out of his day to come home early and help me with my homework. To me, I'm most proud of that. Is because without working with my parents, I won't be successful. And if I want to be successful, I need to work with them. I need to realize I need to cooperate with them. I know it might not be easy. Sometimes they annoy you, but you also annoy them back as well. Which is the ugly truth, you know. So the main thing that I'm proud of is my parents and all the work that they put in for my success. And I'm also proud that they pay my way in all my schoolings, like preschool, middle school, high school, college, and I promise them that I will pay them back with every ounce of hard work that I have and every things that they teach me to become a great person. Because of them, I'm going to be a great person, and I accept this message. Thank you.
Done. Sound like you're giving a campaign speech there.
Thanks.
What is your favorite sound?
Is it possible for us to go back and answer one of the previous questions already asked?
Yeah, sure. What do you want to, which one?
What would I tell my younger self?
Okay.
What's your name?
I'm David.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of you guys probably don't know me, but I'm David, as I just stated. And the question I've been given is, what would I tell my younger self if I could go back in time? Now, I don't mean to make this speech sound morbid, but life is ephemeral. What I mean by that is, you are going to die. Now don't get scared. I know that sounds scary. I know some of you guys might be mulling over the thought of dying, but that should be an impetus for you to take action today. If any company has said it best, I think it's Nike, and they said, just do it. I've missed out in my life personally on so many opportunities where I could have just pulled the trigger and it could have been so much farther along my path of where I wanted to go. I could have left such a big impact on several other people if I just pulled the trigger. And that's my message to my younger self. And that one,
Yeah, you're good.
yeah, so that's it.
good, David.
Thank you.
Definitely didn't sound like a first-time guest up here.
Been hustled.
Yeah.
I'm not that good at speeches.
It's about practice and repetition.
Yep. All right, how are we doing? We got time for a few more. Okay. If you were forced to eliminate every physical possession from your life with the exception of what you could fit in a single backpack, what would you put in it? All right, Shane.
Hello, everyone. Toastmasters guest. I've been asked if I could get rid of my physical possessions except for what I could fit in a backpack. What would those things be? This is easy for me. I don't really consider myself a materialistic person. Although I do have a lot of material things, I don't feel attached to them. I don't know if pets count in this scenario, but if we're talking non-living things, there is one thing that comes to mind that I've actually made game plans in case something happens to my house just because I plan for everything. But one thing a lot of people don't know about me is I'm from New York City. I used to live in Queens, and when I was a little kid, I used to love disposable cameras. And I was always getting them, always getting the pictures developed, and I loved making the albums. Well, I had to move down here due to unfortunate circumstances, but later one thing that was recovered was my album of my pictures that I took as a kid. And in college I got to go back, and I hadn't been there since I was small, and I got to see everything, like have my pictures and also see the things in real life. So it was cool, or not real life, but see them again as an adult. And it was crazy to have that and see what it looks like now versus when I was a kid and everything was so big and new and adventurous and fun. So if I could grab one thing out of my house besides my pets, and I guess my husband, he can come too, it would be that picture album from when I was a kid when I lived in New York City. Thank you.
Last one. Anybody want to volunteer and get a random one asked?
Okay, I'll volunteer.
All right, here you go. We'll pick a number.
51.
All right. If we learn from our mistakes, why are we always afraid to make a mistake?
If we learn from our mistake,
If you learn from your mistakes, why are we always afraid to make a mistake?
if we learn from our mistakes, why are we always so afraid to make a mistake? Because making mistakes suck. Always. Even though we learn from me, myself, and even though most of the results are ephemeral, I still beat myself up on certain mistakes. Even some mistakes that aren't as big a deal, but because life is ephemeral, I get over most of it. Sometimes I go back to some of it, but I know I must move forward, as was spoken from some of the other table topics. So even though I like learning from mistakes, I don't like making mistakes. Mr. Topic Master.
Yeah, it's advice you always hear, but it's a tough one to follow. Fail fast, make mistakes. Okay, so that ends our speaking. Well, the speech. Welcome, Maurice.
Fellow Toastmasters, honored guest. First, I will give the general evaluation of the meeting. The meeting started on time. We took time out to go over business, future business for Toastmasters, not only for this club, but for the district also. We kept each member and guest behind the lectern constantly. There wasn't a large period of time where the lectern was unoccupied. The speeches, they went well, and the table topics went well. At this time, I will give my evaluation as a speech evaluator for Sean's icebreaker speech. Being an icebreaker speech, sometimes it might be a more nervous moment for the average person. Me in particular, and I'll get a little bit more into it as I evaluate Sean's speech. I think I did a little better on my icebreaker than I did on my second and third speech. But hopefully I'll get more into it, but I'm going to get into the evaluation of Sean's speech. Sean excelled at decent clarity and volume of voice. Some things that you may want to work on: eye contact with the audience, and I do realize you had notes to refer to. And also, and this is hard for me to do, try to recognize the audience awareness of the speech. There's a section in the evaluation for audience awareness. And for example, to get a 5 under audience awareness, it says engages audience completely and anticipates audience's needs. So I don't have a full grasp of the audience awareness part of the speech. To challenge yourself, try to use less notes, even though notes are permitted in speeches. Just try to remember as much as you can and just focus on, just look at the audience at the same time as you give your speech, even though notes are permitted and you can refer to notes. The evaluation form, it's rated 1 through 5, and it's not 5 excellent and 1 poor. It's 5 exemplary, 4 excels, 3 accomplished, 2 emerging, 1 developing. And as Lawrence said several times, doing the evaluation, a person should rarely get a 5 on anything. Well, definitely all 5s. No one should get all 5s, or maybe even all 4s. So I'll go through some of the points here. Clarity, I gave him a 3, which is accomplished. Vocal variety, I gave him 2 for emerging. The only part I gave him a 1 at is eye contact, because he was referring to his notes. He did look up sometimes at the audience, but that just indicates that he's developing in his eye contact. So otherwise, you got 2s and 3s, emerging or accomplished. And that is the evaluation of Sean's speech. At this time, I would like to have Cheyenne give Diego's speech evaluation.
Hello, honored guest Toastmasters. I'll be giving the evaluation for Diego's speech, How to Give Pocket Speech. This is a good timing for you to do this speech because we recently heard one by Lawrence, and it was interesting to see what he said, but he also gave completely different points than what he gave, so it was very informative. One thing that you excelled at is the parts of your speech were very clear. You said, this is what I'm talking about, 1, 2, and 3. I think that helped it flow very well. For example, when you were talking about different speech anxieties, that was relatable. And then I was anticipating number 2, which was going to be the solution to that. So I think you set that up very well. People like problem solution. It was making me feel a little anxious while I was thinking about it. Another thing you excelled at was your speech was very encouraging. If you are nervous about giving a speech, I felt that your speech was more encouraging for someone who maybe doesn't do it as much, to give it a try. It's not as scary as it looks, especially when you reference that we do have time limits, but you said, don't worry about that. If you don't make it, it's okay. So I think that's good. Because sometimes we feel under pressure. It has to be this long, and we sit there and time our speeches out, but I think that's good that you're still encouraging, and there is leniency with that. Maybe if you're not getting paid, if you're getting paid to do it, maybe not. But with us, yeah. So one thing you want to work on, I think it's like a similar theme. Sometimes when you're speaking, you may start with I think I may talk about this now. I think if you just say, I'm going to talk about this more, and maybe it makes it a little stronger, more effective, more affirmative. I think I'm going to talk about this now. I think my next point will be, you're such a strong speaker, you can say, I'm going to talk about this now. It would just make it stronger. It's not bad, it would just make it stronger. So for clarity, I gave you a 4. You excel at communicating what your points were. Like I said, breaking it up into 3 points, setting up the first anxiety, then the solution. It was really great. Vocal variety, you have a good pace with your voice. Sometimes it doesn't really ebb and flow, but as far as a pace of speech, you do really well at pacing yourself. You don't talk really slow and then have to talk really fast at the end because you're running out of time, like I'm doing right now. Eye contact, I give you a 3. You are good at eye contact, but I did notice you kind of drift off to the side sometimes, maybe look up or around, maybe direct eye contact or the forehead trick, just to stare at people's foreheads. Gestures, I give you a 2. Although you did have gestures, it said limited, but I feel like you could do more variety of gestures. It was more of a lot of this, maybe more things like this and then this, just make them more relatable to what you're saying instead of just having the gestures, and I do that too. So audience awareness, you had really good points about that, especially when you did your poll and no one raised their hand. That's good, because some people would say that and then not acknowledge that. They'll just keep going, not acknowledging what's happening. And I think it's good to have audience awareness, because sometimes we're so focused on our speech that we don't, it's just get through the speech, not worrying about the audience while we're doing that. Comfort level, gave you a 3, you're very comfortable. And then interest level, I gave you a 4, because it was really interesting. So that is it for my evaluation.
At this time, we'll have the timer's report from Donovan.
Thank you, Maurice. Okay. For the pure speech portion, Sean had 6 minutes and 11 seconds. Diego had 4 minutes and 12 seconds. For the table topic portion, Travaros has 1 minute and 3 seconds. Diego was 1 minute and 28 seconds. Myself was 2 minutes and 26 seconds. David was 1 minute and 11 seconds. Cheyenne was 1 minute and 26 seconds. And Maurice was 1 minute and 1 second. For the evaluation portion, which we just finished, Maurice was 3 minutes and 29 seconds. And Cheyenne was 3 minutes and 59 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Donovan. At this time, we'll have the all-counter and grammarians report from Cheyenne.
Okay, so for our first speech with Sean, we had 3 uhs and 1 And then for our second speech, I did not catch any. There you go. Table topics. I'm sorry, I did not catch your name. Travarvis, he used the word of the day and gave a really good speech for a first time. No mistakes caught. Diego, no mistakes caught. Donovan, you only had 1 David, no mistakes caught and used the word of the day. Maurice used the word of the day twice, no mistakes caught. And then I had 2 O's and 3 ums.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we went over timers, went over both speech evaluations and the general evaluation. So this concludes the general evaluation, and I will relinquish the turn back to the Toastmaster.
So we have I'm going to do an educational overview for tonight. Didn't prepare this, but I just finished a book on negotiation, so I'll talk about that in relation to communication. So the book is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And Chris was an FBI negotiator, negotiated major hostage cases and terrorist negotiations. So one example of one of the skills he uses is to ask how and why questions. So the old way of determining whether the person was still alive is they would ask a question like you fill out when you set up a new password. Where were you born? What's your favorite movie? Things like that. Something only the person would know. But it's just a quick yes, no, or the answer response. And the negotiators really never got much out of that besides, okay, yeah, they're talking to them. So instead, a better way to approach that is ask how, why. How do I know so-and-so is still alive? And it puts the ball back in their court, and they now feel like they're in charge and are able to make a decision. And typically, they're like, well, here, and they give the hostage the phone, and that's a big step in a hostage negotiation, is actually talking to the hostage. So it's a way to say no, but not saying no. So how am I supposed to do that, or why, or actually not why. You shouldn't say why, because why is kind of a negative, like why do I want to do that, or why. But how and what questions are good to uncover information, or to say no in a way that doesn't sound like saying no. So if somebody offers you, comes back, let's say you're buying a car, and they say, yeah, it's going to be $24,000. And you say, how am I supposed to do that? And they're typically going to say, oh, well, they kind of make some struggle, and maybe they'll think of another solution. And then another tip is use specific numbers because they seem calculated. So if you're kind of going back and forth on price, you can say, well, I think it should be this, $1,233.20. Like, wow, he did some work to calculate that instead of round numbers, because that round numbers typically mean it's estimate. It's not really the real number, and you're probably going to get more haggle back and forth that way. And another tip is use empathy, which is kind of common sense, but I feel like when people go into negotiation, they're kind of like hard-nosed. I'm right, I'm going to get this, what I want, but you need to try to be kind of empathetic, and that's going to put both of you at ease, because you don't want to, if you got two people butting heads, you're not going to get anywhere. So you want to try to be empathetic and see the side from the other person's perspective. And then another tip for numbers is to use ranges, so you can set like a higher or diminish a perceived value. So you can come in like you're doing a salary negotiation. I feel like I should make anywhere between 70 and 130,000. So you created this range. Really, maybe you're just trying to get like 75, but I did some research, and people with my experience are making this range. So then it puts a perceived higher value. So if they get you like 80, you're like, well, I got a bargain in this salary offer. So it's another kind of tip which I thought was interesting. And then the last tip, if you're in a back and forth negotiation on price, is to throw in an item that's not monetary. you know, not cash, because then it really seems like, okay, he's all in. He's, you know, he has no more cash. He's going to give me a watch or something away. So those are some tips from the book. It's actually a pretty good book. I've read 2 or 3 books on negotiation. I felt like it was the most practical because FBI actually used it, so it was interesting. And that is the educational overview for tonight. Now, does anyone have a request for positions for next week? Speeches?
I'm gonna go and try and do a prepared speech next week.
Okay.
So I'll just go on easy speak.
I apologize. But I think it's very confusion.
Do we want to have elections too? That's another question. So we can have it a little bit earlier. We don't have to go right up until the
Exactly, yeah.
due date for that. So maybe just kind of play it by ear. Day we have a large turnout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably by the, probably should have it wrapped up by the 2nd week in June,
Okay.
if not earlier.
I can just announce like at the beginning of the meetings, you know, who's
Yeah.
wanting what, and then if
Yeah.
anybody else is interested. Lawrence is doing a road trip around the U.S., so I'm not sure if he's going to want
Yes.
to take a role or not. So.
Exactly.
Okay. You want to volunteer for something, Sean?
I'll do grammarian odd counter
Okay.
next week.
Well, thanks everyone. Thank you guests for participating tonight, and let's have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, so we need to get this payment.